Hi everyone, welcome back. Today's video is all about my kitchen favorites part 2 because I already did a part 1. People complained that it was all about caffeine essentially. So today we're gonna talk about some of my other favorites. All right, so last video that I did, I talked about my coffee machines, my coffee makers, my milk frother, and people were like, but what about other stuff, like the stuff you use to cook? And one of those items was the Instant Pot that somebody mentioned in the comments of that video. And I absolutely love my Instant Pot. It definitely is one of the most used items in my kitchen. You guys just gotta be patient with me because we had to wait till part 2. I had to entice you for this. So Instant Pot is absolutely one of my favorite tools for the kitchen and for cooking and everything. When I first got it, it probably got even more use than it does now, but it's still one of the most used products in my kitchen. If you don't know what an Instant Pot is, it's a pressure cooker, but it's really easy to use once you get the hang of it. And online, there are so many different recipes to basically make using your Instant Pot, and you realize it just cuts out that time. In some ways, you almost have to get used to using it because, you know, like if there are stews and stuff that you love to make, but you've had to use like a crock pot and let it sit for, you know, like hours or even sometimes overnight, your Instant Pot makes that in like a quarter of the time, sometimes even faster. A really good example of something that I love to make in my Instant Pot is any of those like slow roasted kind of meat dishes, you know, that can take forever. And in order for the meat to be nice and tender, you have to really slowly cook it. One of my favorites is carnitas. I make that in my Instant Pot all the time. I think it takes me like 45, 50 minutes max, and we have the best carnitas ever. It's the type of device that you pull out when you want comfort food. That's truly what I make in my Instant Pot, is all of my comfort foods. The, you know, just that slow roasted stuff, the stews, the soups, the meats that are really nice and tender. It's really great for all of those types of dishes. But you can even make, like I've seen people make like intricate mac and cheese in their Instant Pot. So there are so many different things that you can make in it. So next up on the list are my knives. The knives that I have are by a brand called Global. I'm not going to try to tout them as the best knife brand out there. I just know that they are a fancy knife brand, and that's really the whole point that I want to make about this. So when my husband and I got married, a decade ago, we put fancy knives on our registry, and up until that point, I had never had a fancy knife, mostly because they seemed unnecessarily expensive. For instance, the knife set that we got from Global was at the time like a little over $400 for the set. Like I think each knife goes for more than $100 each. We got their classic set where it comes with like the 4 knives that you need, and I have to tell you, like having even just one really fancy knife will change your cooking life. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did. They're made in Japan. They're, you know, like apparently like the same metal that they use for swords, and from like the same blacksmith or like craftsmen that that make swords and stuff like that. Like that was the whole like marketing behind it back then when we had put them on our registry. They just seemed really nice too. And I have to tell you, the minute I started using these knives, I realized what I had been missing my entire life when I used dull, terrible, cheap knives. One, it saves you so much time to use a really sharp, nice knife because you'll be so surprised by how quickly it peels stuff, it cuts stuff. It just saves you so much time. And because the knives are so sharp, they also, it seems like they would be scary, like you would harm yourself more. But what I have found is that I actually harm myself less using these super sharp knives because they are so good versus like the dull knives. All of my knife injuries in my entire life have always been these cheap, dull knives. The only time that a really super sharp knife is scary is if you're like my friend Nikki and you drop it on her foot. Obviously, you want to be really careful with super sharp knives. The only other thing to keep in mind is when you get super sharp knives, you also have to keep them sharp. So you have to regularly sharpen them. But we got one of those like sharpeners. It's really easy to use at home, and these knives have lasted us. We have had them, like I said, for a decade, and only in that time, only one of them has ever broken on us. I don't think that you have to get a set of these really nice knives. Truly, if you can only get one knife that is super, super nice, I'd get like one butcher's knife or something, or even like a paring knife. Those are probably the two that I use the most, but probably the butcher knife is the one that I use the absolute most. That's for meat, that's for cutting fruit and vegetables. It just really, really comes in handy, and I'm telling you, it will change your cooking life. All right, so along the same lines of having a really nice knife, I also highly, highly, highly recommend that you purchase some food scissors. You either know what they are or you don't know. If you know, you know. But food scissors are also a game changer in the kitchen. The first time I ever saw somebody actually use scissors to cut food was at a Korean barbecue restaurant, and I was like, that's weird. And then I watched how easy that was, and I always kept it in mind. And then I finally went ahead and bought a pair of food scissors. You know, if you think about it, a lot of those like knife sets come with food scissors, but I think like for me at least, it never occurred to me that you could actually use them to cut your food, but it really is a game changer to have scissors that are specifically for your food. I'm not talking about kitchen scissors that are used to cut like open, you know, like even boxes and all that kind of stuff. These are the scissors that you reserve only for food to keep it clean. And the way that we use them is we do cut up meat. So like especially raw meat is very, very hard to cut. You can also, you know, like cut stuff like pasta. If you have like really long noodles and you want to cut them smaller, especially if you have kids, then it's really easy to just pull the food scissors out for that. It's also great if you have food items that are in packages that need to be cut open. Instead of getting out a knife and dangerously trying to use a knife to cut open one of these packages, you use your food scissors, because you know that even if like some of the food gets onto those scissors, it's okay. Those are the scissors that you throw into your dishwasher all the time anyway. So it's totally fine. And you also know that they're clean. They're not like dirty scissors that have like gunk from something, you know, that they were used on that had nothing to do with food. These are specifically just for the kitchen. You don't have to get an expensive pair of scissors. Obviously, the sharper, the better. The ones that we have are from KitchenAid, and they've been great for the last 2 years. All right, next up is my Microplane. If you don't have a Microplane and you don't know what it is, it's essentially, it's like a grater, but it's a handheld grater. So I went most of my life without a Microplane, and then at some point when I was, especially when I was pregnant with Nikosh, so my first pregnancy about like 5 years ago, I suddenly had the urge to just bake and bake and bake and bake. And there were so many recipes that I was interested in that called for a microplane, where you would just, you know, you would take like citrus especially, and you would microplane the outside of like a citrus fruit, whether it's like an orange or a lemon, and you would just put a little bit of, you know, like the peel, you would microplane it onto your baked goods, and it just adds a little magic touch. I can't even begin to explain it, but you know, it's something that you just cannot get by using a knife at all. You have to have a microplaner for it, and it makes your life so much easier, because it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to get a little fancy, like you feel like you're a pro, you have to have a microplane, because you have to get that little touch of like your citrus, you know, just microplaned onto one of your dishes. The other way that I actually pull it out though is I love Parmesan, and you know, like sometimes I have to actually pull out like a real grater to, you know, get a lot of Parmesan. But if I just wanted a little touch of Parmesan, I love pulling out the microplane and just putting a little bit of Parmesan on like all of my pasta dishes. At the beginning of the pandemic, when we were full blown just like cooking, trying to make this fun, we were really going to town, and there were so many dishes that I pulled out the microplane for, and it's so nice. It just gives you that fresh, you know, like just a little bit of fresh Parmesan, a little bit of citrus. There are so many reasons to use it, and I'm probably not selling it hard, but I'll tell you, we use our microplane all the time. Microplanes I find tend to be a little bit cheap. We've gone through like 3 of them in the past like 2 years, so I don't want to necessarily say that the one that you buy is going to be the most amazing. As long as it just does its job, it's great to have. Next up is our Beast blender. I actually put this into a favorites video because we had really just gotten it and we were starting to use it all the time. This blender gets used every day in our household. And what's funny about this is, you know, like the Instant Pot, you know, the food mixer that I mentioned in my last kitchen favorites video and stuff, all of those items got a lot of play at the start of the pandemic because we were really going hard with cooking and baking and all of that kind of stuff, just like everybody else. Everybody was like, you know, I feel like on Instagram, you just saw everybody's like elaborate meals that they were making, and like, you know, just everyone was trying to, you know, like make up for the fact that they were not going to restaurants anymore. And then at some point you saw everyone just stop posting about like the elaborate dishes and the bread that they were baking and stuff. It all just ended for some reason. I'm not really sure why. I think everyone just got burnt out. So now we're in like the next evolution of this, and it's on to smoothies every single day. And so the Beast gets play every single morning. My husband and I drink a smoothie every day now, now, and it's made me feel a little bit better about myself. And while I don't necessarily think that all smoothies are healthier or low in calories, it really depends on you and what you put into your smoothie. But for some reason, having a smoothie every single morning with my husband has really just made me feel like I'm on my way to starting to eat healthier. Maybe I'm gonna start working out more. All of the healthy habits are going to start up. So the Beast blender has been amazing. It's so easy to use. One, it just looks really cute sitting on your counter because big blenders can be so annoying, and just even like cleaning up after you use a big blender like a Vitamix. I hear some people say like, it's not, what's so hard about it? But I don't know what it is. I realize that doesn't make any sense when I say that I'm too lazy to clean my Vitamix or a big blender every single day, but there's something that happens mentally for me. I just won't do it. So I won't use like a big blender for my smoothies every day, but this little blender, the Beast, I will use it every day with no complaints. It's just so much easier to use. There's just like these little pieces, you pop it on, you actually can drink out of the little blender holder, like the little cup, or the compartment, whatever you want to call it. But it makes enough for 2 servings, actually even like 3 servings. My husband, I'll see him make a smoothie and then save half of it. So it's really like a decent size. You're gonna get a lot of smoothie in there, or juice, or whatever else that you're blending with it. But there's just something about it that makes it easier. And I can't even completely put like my finger on what it is, but I think it's just because it's smaller and more compact. Next up is our fruit bowl. This fruit bowl was a gift. It wasn't even necessarily meant to be a fruit bowl. It was just a big, beautiful bowl. I think our friends got it from, I want to say like a Moroccan or a Turkish store where, they just had all these goods from either Morocco or Turkey. I cannot remember where they said that they got it. It's a beautiful bowl though. That's all I really can say. It's a gorgeous bowl and it's nice and large. And I'll tell you, it gets so much use every day. Our kids are obsessed with fruit. If you have kids, like fruit, you go through fruit so quickly with kids, especially with toddlers. So our fruit bowl is packed with like oranges and apples and lemons. Lemons are mine. All the rest of it is for my children. And it's just so much easier to have them sitting in this fruit bowl so that your kids can just access them at all times. And they also see that there's fruit. So instead of them asking for all the pantry snacks, which are closed off, they ask for fruit more often than anything else. And that's what I prefer. I don't mind giving them pantry snacks because they eventually do resort to those as well. But I prefer that they start off with the fruits, especially if it's like a quick snack before dinner and stuff. You don't want them to be too full. The ability to see the fruit in front of them really helps them. It doesn't necessarily look pretty at this point because we have it overloaded with different fruits now that we have 2 kids. But before we had 2 kids, when we only had 1, it used to look much prettier. It was actually like this really nice bowl to have sitting out on our counter with all of our fruit. Now it's just jam-packed with fruit. So I wouldn't say it's pretty now, but it could be pretty. So a fruit bowl is a must. Along those lines also is a pastry display dish. It's something that I purchased a while ago. I wanted to look for like a cake stand or like a cake holder, and I found instead these, like, I don't even know what it's truly called. It's like a pastry display dish. And I've had this for years and it gets used all the time because it turns out it's the best way to store any of your baked goods. Like we have a cookie jar and stuff and I use it every once in a while, but there's something about this display dish. It has a glass top so you can see everything that's in it that causes you to actually eat all of the food, because like with the cookie jar, nobody can see the cookies. And when I say nobody, I mean my kids and my husband don't see the cookies and stuff, so they forget that they're in there and then they go stale. Whereas when we put any of our baked goods into this pastry display dish, you always see it. It's like sitting right there on your counter. Everything gets eaten while it's still fresh. And it also just really keeps everything nice and fresh is what I found. Like if we get fresh bread or we bake some fresh bread, we'll put it in there. If we get, croissants, we'll put them in there. Those only last like another day. Like that's the max for a croissant. But muffins, cookies, any of the things that we're baking, if we put it into this display case, everything stays fresher and nicer for at least a couple days. And then the last most used item in our kitchen is, I don't even know what it's called, but it's a pots and pans organizer. It's not necessarily for pots and pans because we actually use it just in any of our corner, you know what it is? It's a organizer for your corner cabinets. That's truly what it is. And it's kind of like the equivalent of like a Lazy Susan, but in cabinet organizer form. So in our kitchen, just to also like set it up for you, we have 3 corner cabinets, and they are huge cabinets. But the problem that you find when you have these huge cabinets is that if you don't like put different levels, like there aren't any shelves in them or anything, then they don't actually hold a lot. Like if it's just this huge cabinet, but there's only a bottom shelf, you really only can put stuff on the bottom, and that just feels like it's wasteful. Plus, if it's in a corner, you then find that you'll like whatever you get like tucked back there in the back of the corner, you'll never access it again. Like if you put your Instant Pot back there, you're never gonna use your Instant Pot. You put your blender back there, you'll never use your blender because it's all the way in the back. It almost seems like it's gone to who knows where. So when you open this cabinet, you can just turn the little organizer and whatever you have on it comes towards you. So it makes your life so much easier. So we have one cabinet that is for all of our like Tupperware and just any of our containers. And then we have 2 cabinets that are strictly for like our pans. Our Instant Pot goes into one of them. We put pots basically in one and then pans in the other, and it just makes our lives so much easier. If I had one more corner cabinet, I would put all of my baking sheets into it, but right now they just live in my oven. So those are my kitchen favorites part 2. I could actually do a whole other video on some of my kitchen favorites. I could also talk about some of the staples, the food staples that we have in our house as well. So if you guys want to see that, I can make that a video too. Just let me know in the comments, and if you have questions on any of the items that I mentioned, please let me know. You can find me on Instagram. I'm at Susan Yara, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.